Introduction. 1. The contest for power, Stalin versus Trotsky. Joseph Stalin outmaneuvered his rivals, including Leon Trotsky, to consolidate power by 1929. Trotsky was eventually exiled, marking the start of a ruthless era in Soviet politics. 2. The Enigma machine and World War II code breaking. The Enigma machine, used by the Germans to encode messages, was deciphered by British mathematician Alan Turing and his team at Bletchley Park, significantly aiding the Allied victory. 3. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt. Body: Cleopatra VII, known for her intelligence and political acumen, ruled Egypt until its annexation by Rome in 30 BCE. Her alliances and romances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony are legendary. 4. The fall of Constantinople. Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II conquered the city, transforming it into Istanbul and establishing the Ottoman Empire as a dominant force. 5. The samurai of Japan. Samurai were elite warriors serving feudal lords in medieval Japan. Their code of honor, Bushido, emphasized loyalty, honor, and martial arts. 6. The Cuban Missile Crisis. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the U.S. discovered Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, leading to a tense 13-day standoff. It ended with a Soviet agreement to dismantle the missiles. 7. The reign of Queen Elizabeth I. Queen Elizabeth I, reigning from 1558 to 1603, defeated the Spanish Armada and fostered a golden age of exploration and culture, known as the Elizabethan era. 8. The unification of Germany. In 1871, Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor, orchestrated the unification of German states through wars and diplomacy, establishing the German Empire under Kaiser Wilhelm I. 9. The rise and fall of the Mongol Empire. Founded by Genghis Khan in the early 13th century, the Mongol Empire stretched from Europe to Asia, known for its military prowess and trade routes like the Silk Road. 10. The American Civil War. The conflict between the Northern States, Union, and Southern States, Confederacy, over slavery and states' rights resulted in over 600,000 deaths and ended with the abolition of slavery. 11. The construction of the Great Wall of China. Built to protect against invasions, the Great Wall was constructed over several dynasties, with the most famous sections built during the Ming Dynasty, 1368–1644. 12. The French Revolution. The French Revolution, 1789–1799, was fueled by social inequality and economic hardship. It led to the overthrow of the monarchy, rise of Napoleon, and the spread of revolutionary ideals across Europe. 13. The Viking Age. From the late 8th to early 11th century, Norse seafarers from Scandinavia, known as Vikings, raided and settled across Europe. They were skilled navigators and warriors, leaving a lasting legacy. 14. The Space Race. During the Cold War, the space race saw milestones like the Soviet Union's Sputnik, 1957, and Yuri Gagarin's spaceflight, 1961, followed by the U.S. landing Apollo 11 on the Moon in 1969. 15. The Renaissance. Body: from the 14th to 17th century, the Renaissance began in Italy and spread across Europe, reviving art, science, and literature, with figures like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo leading the way. 1. Stalin's rise to power. Following Lenin's death in 1924, Stalin strategically eliminated political opposition, culminating in the exile of Leon Trotsky in 1929. This marked the beginning of his ruthless reign. 2. Systematic repressions and the Ryatin affair. In 1932, Stalin targeted Mariiman Ryatin and Gregory Zinoviev, prominent anti-Stalinist Bolsheviks, accusing them of terrorism. This led to the expulsion of 800,000 Communist Party members in 1933 alone. 3. The assassination of Sergei Kirov. In 1934, Kirov was assassinated, allegedly by a disgruntled ex-party member. The suspicious circumstances suggested possible NKVD involvement. Stalin used this as a pretext to launch the infamous Moscow trials. 4. The Moscow trials. Starting in 1936, the Moscow trials were Stalin's show trials against alleged traitors, including prominent Bolsheviks like Lev Kamenev and Gregory Zinoviev. These trials used forced confessions to justify Stalin's purges. 5. Impact of forced collectivization. Stalin's forced collectivization in the late 1920s caused significant unrest and severe famines, most notoriously the Holodomor in Ukraine and the Ashar-Shiik in Kazakhstan. Power struggle. After Lenin's death in 1924, Stalin outmaneuvered rivals like Leon Trotsky, culminating in Trotsky's exile in 1929. Rioting affair. In 1932, Stalin targeted anti-Stalinist Bolsheviks, leading to the expulsion of 800,000 Communist Party members in 1933. Kirov assassination. The suspicious assassination of Sergei Kirov in 1934 provided Stalin with a pretext to launch the infamous Moscow trials. Moscow trials. Starting in 1936, Stalin showed trials against alleged traitors used forced confessions to justify widespread purges. Forced collectivization. Stalin's policies caused severe famines, including the Holodomor in Ukraine, marking a dark chapter in Soviet history. 1. Stalin's rise to power. Body. After Lenin's death in 1924, Joseph Stalin maneuvered his way to power, eliminating rivals like Leon Trotsky, who was exiled by 1929. This marked the beginning of Stalin's iron-fisted rule. 2. Systematic repressions, the Ryatin affair. In 1932, Stalin targeted Mariman Ryatin and Gregory Zinoviev, accusing them of terrorism. This led to the expulsion of 800,000 Communist Party members in 1933 alone. 3. Assassination of Sergei Kirov. In 1934, Kirov was assassinated, allegedly by Leonid Nikolaev. This event allowed Stalin to launch the Great Purge, starting with the Moscow trials. 4. The Moscow trials. The Moscow trials from 1936–1938 were Stalin's show trials against alleged traitors, including prominent Bolsheviks like Lev Kamenev and Gregory Zinoviev. Forced confessions were used to justify mass purges. 5. Forced collectivization and famine. Body. Stalin's forced collectivization caused severe famines, including the Holodomor in Ukraine and the famine in Kazakhstan, resulting in millions of deaths. Visuals, maps of affected areas, photos of famine victims, and collectivization propaganda. 6. The Red Army Purge. The Great Purge extended to the Red Army, with thousands of officers executed or imprisoned. This decimation weakened the military, influencing Germany's decision to invade the Soviet Union in World War II. 7. World War II, the Enigma Machine. The Enigma Machine, used by the Nazis, was deciphered by Alan Turing and his team at Bletchley Park, aiding the Allied victory. 8. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt. Cleopatra VII ruled Egypt until its annexation by Rome in 30 BCE. Her alliances and romances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony are legendary. 9. The Cuban Missile Crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis involved the U.S. discovering Soviet missiles in Cuba, leading to a tense standoff that ended with the dismantling of the missiles. 10. The Space Race. During the Cold War, the space race saw milestones like the Soviet Union's Sputnik, 1957, and Yuri Gagarin's spaceflight, 1961, followed by the U.S. landing Apollo 11 on the Moon in 1969. Stalin's rise and repressions. Joseph Stalin's rise to power was marked by ruthless tactics and systematic repressions. Stalin's rise to power. After Lenin's death, Stalin outmaneuvered rivals like Trotsky, consolidating power by 1929. Rioting. Stalin targeted anti-Stalinist Bolsheviks, expelling 800,000 Communist Party members in 1933. Kirov assassination. The assassination of Sergei Kirov in 1934 allowed Stalin to launch the Great Purge. Moscow. Stalin's show trials against alleged traitors justified mass purges in the Soviet Union. Moscow. Stalin's show trials against alleged traitors justified mass purges in the Soviet Union. Forced collectivization and famine. Stalin's policies caused severe famines, including the Holodomor in Ukraine.